So in today's video, I am going to discuss about a particular board which is known as the IB. And essentially, while this board covers schools throughout from the primary to the secondary to the high school level, I am going to primarily focus on the high school level. Now, essentially, this high school level board is known as the Ib Diploma. So this is the diploma you get when you complete this board, and this is targeted towards students aged from 16 to 19. Now typically if you compare the IB diploma to a regular curriculum, it would be something which is taught in classes following class 10, so the next two classes. Now as far as IB is concerned, the claims it makes are that it provides you a balanced growth as far as all aspects of the education system are concerned, and also that it promotes geographical and cultural mobility. So this is something that is very important in this board because it is highly global and it is particularly targeted to people who are global citizens or aspirational global citizens and who probably want to go to the top universities of the world and then pursue their college and postgraduate degrees there. Now, the difference between a typical board and the IB board is that while a typical board has a set of subjects and then there are exams in this subject and there are probably aspects of practical and theory component on each of these subjects, for IB you do need to study 6 subjects, and these subjects have two possibilities. You can take 3 or more subjects at a higher level, so that is known as HL, and then 3 subjects at a standard level, so that is typically known as SL. Now the important fact about the IB board is not just this particular study of the subjects which is generally there in all boards, but there are certain aspects of IB known as the theory of knowledge, TOK, and then an essay which you need to write, which is quite substantial, which is actually typical of independent research. There are also several creativity, action and service type of tasks which you need to do. So these tasks essentially make people to work in volunteer type of activities or in situation where they try to help out people and so on. Now the maximum score you can get in the IB board is 45 and the minimum you must get is 24 to get the diploma. But of course, if you get below 24, then you can fail the board. So that is a negative aspect. Now for each of the typical subjects, you can get a score between 1 and 7, and most universities actually mention that 4 to 5 is a score which is typically required. Now as far as IB is concerned, there are various subjects you can select. So again, there is a typical language and literature section. There is a section on commerce and economics type of subjects where you can even study business management or philosophy. There is a section on languages, so here you can study Spanish, French, Mandarin and even classical languages such as Latin and Greek. There is a subject on science, so here you can study biology, chemistry, computer science, physics, design technology and so on. And then there is finally a subject on mathematics, and again here you can study something known as mathematical studies at a basic level, or you can study mathematics at a senior level or a higher level. So I would say that this board is a good preparation for people who are typically based around the world, and this is probably best suited for children of expatriates working in different countries who may be moving around the world, and they may want to have a curriculum which is constant as they move around the world. And the particular interesting aspect of this board is this theory of knowledge. So let us look at theory of knowledge, TOK. Now here the student reflects on the nature of knowledge and on how we know what we claim to know. And essentially here they have to write a paper which is quite substantial, almost 2000 words long, and has to give an oral presentation on this topic. And this essay typically includes aspects of philosophy, the personal growth of this person and the general picture or the worldview this person has developed at a certain stage today. So I think this essay will greatly help a person in coming to terms with their primary focus in life and also lead to some level of introspection about their particular plan in terms of contribution and so on. Now, beside this TOK, there is a section where he needs to come up with a 4,000 word paper, and this is a separate task, and this will involve independent self-directed piece of research. So I can certainly say that this board would be preparing a person very well for research type of situations, because there is a lot of focus on independent thinking, critical thinking, reading and writing, and these aspects are important in college in general, and particularly if this person aspires to do graduate study and further study into a PhD and become a scholar in general, then this board would be very useful for such a person. Also, of course, you can see as a byproduct of this kind of detailed study, the person will become very good in verbal skills, and also if he has taken the mathematics HL and so on, then the person will also improve his quantitative skills. So this person may do quite well in the SAT, ACT and some of these examinations. Now, typically some schools will consider IB courses also for extra credit, so that is something which you need to look at, because this is not always the scenario. Most US universities actually prefer the AP system. So again, that is something to keep in mind as to whether you may still need to give the AP exams to get credit and so on. Now, for some students, it may be better to take a regular board and then to give the AP exams on the side and go for the SAT and ACT and try to maximize the score on those examinations. But then there are students who are of a broader frame of mind, who have more interest in terms of education and research, and not necessarily in a narrow sense focusing only on getting top marks. For those people, the IB board may be useful. Now, of course, one should keep in mind that the IB board is quite expensive. It is actually run by an organization based in Geneva. So therefore, it is a very global board, and it's often considered by people living in countries such as Singapore, the Middle East, Hong Kong and so on. And of course, this board has also started spreading around the world. And so you need to consider the cost aspect of this board, and I would suggest that you need to balance the cost aspect of these 2 years of studying for the diploma versus the cost you are going to incur when you are actually going to do your bachelor's degree. So if you are going to take a loan for your studies, it may be better to take the loan for the time when you actually go for your bachelor's degree than for this particular board here. So again, this board is good for people who are financially well off and their parents can afford to send them to these schools and provide them with a very good background. But one more thing I would say, that be careful about being well prepared for this particular board, because if you are suddenly making a transition to IB from a typical board which focuses totally on exam and rote learning and multiple choice type of situations, then you are going to get a big shock, because a large amount of critical thinking, independent work and writing especially is required here, and all these have to be done by the person themselves. And while the teacher may be willing to guide the process, they are not going to be spoon feeding the students in this particular process, and neither can the parents actually spoon feed the students in this situation. So again, this board is better for people who are self-motivated and who are at a higher level of intelligence compared to their peers, and who already have mastered to some extent the art of reading and writing. So if you have been quite familiar with reading and writing throughout your middle school curriculum, that you actually read a lot of fiction and non-fiction, you are quite well versed in the affairs going on around the world, and you have developed your philosophical and political viewpoints on subjects, then this board would be good. Now, on a positive side, this board can propel a person to the top schools in the world, and there are stories where people have got scholarships for UG programs because they did excellently on this particular IB board. So this is something to keep in mind. And if you are an international student who is applying to the US and you are from a situation where you have given this particular board, then it would be useful. But keep in mind that you need to get high marks in this board, because this board is known to people around the world. So the US university would very much know what the number of points means for each of these exams, And this may not be the case with various state boards and country boards around the world, in which case the university would be focusing more on the SAT and the ACT, and then looking at some of the AP exams if the students have given them. So sometime that can actually help a candidate, because I know some people who did quite reasonably well, let us say as a euphemism, in their class 12 exams, but then they had superlative SAT scores, and so they were able to get into top universities, because many times the fact that the person gets a very good SAT score can outweigh the marks or the grades this person gets at a typical university around the world, because people are not necessarily familiar with the grading systems of all the international university, all the international colleges and high schools around the world. So that is something to keep in mind, but they may be very familiar with the IB system. Therefore you should try to get scores of 5 or more if you are planning for some good university. So again, this is something to keep in mind, that the IB board is there, and this is an excellent situation for people who are trying to go for research in the long run. And if you have done well in this board, I think you are very likely to land up for graduate study and probably go on into some of those public policy type of situations and become a global citizen. So these were some aspects I had for you today, and you can find more aspects on the web page of this particular board, which you can search in Google. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned to my channel for more such videos. Thank you very much.